moment you realize your age is just a number. That's when your life truly begins its most extraordinary chapter. I know because at 78, I'm living a life that would have astonished my younger self. I'm Albert Hsu, and unlike what most people assume about someone my age, I just returned from a solo backpacking trip through Portugal last month. Before you think I'm some extraordinary exception or blessed with unusual genetics, let me assure you, I'm not. What I've discovered about aging has little to do with luck and everything to do with perspective and specific choices that anyone can make. I understand the fears that come with growing older, the worry that your best years are behind you, the concern that your body and mind will inevitably decline, the fear of becoming irrelevant or invisible in a world obsessed with youth. I've felt all of these emotions myself. But what if I told you that the most common beliefs about aging are fundamentally flawed? That there are 7 unexpected truths I've discovered, along with other vibrant seniors I know, that completely transform the experience of growing older. These aren't just feel-good platitudes. They're practical realizations that have revolutionized my later years and could do the same for you. Why does this matter now? Because we're living in a time when more people are living longer than ever before in human history. The quality of those additional years will be determined by the perspectives and habits we embrace. What you believe about aging today will shape every aspect of your tomorrow. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation, the 7th quality that makes seniors truly exceptional, is something that changed everything for me. It's a perspective shift so powerful that it doesn't just improve your experience of aging, it transforms your entire understanding of what it means to live a good life at any age. The first thing that separates exceptional seniors from the rest is something that might surprise you: physical adaptability. Not extraordinary strength or fitness, but a willingness to adapt how we move and stay active. When I first noticed my knees protesting during my morning jog at 67, I assumed my active life was coming to its natural end. I pictured a future of gradually decreasing mobility, eventually leading to a sedentary existence. After all, isn't that what aging is supposed to look like? The body breaks down, and we simply accept it. What I discovered instead stunned me. When I finally mentioned my knee pain to my neighbor Richard, a former physical therapist who's now 82, he laughed and said, "Albert, you don't need to stop moving. You just need to move differently." The next day, he introduced me to swimming and a modified strength training routine that actually felt better than my old exercises. Within 3 months, I was stronger than I'd been in a decade. I felt the difference in everything: carrying groceries, climbing stairs, even in my posture and energy levels. The pain that I thought was the inevitable decline of age was actually just my body asking for a change. I'm not alone in this discovery. My friend Elena, who turned 75 last year, had been a dedicated runner all her life until arthritis made it too painful. Instead of giving up, she discovered indoor cycling and water aerobics. At first, I resisted, she told me over coffee last week. It felt like accepting defeat. Now I realize I was just stuck in a rut of doing the same thing I'd always done. My new routines actually work better for me now. Have you ever abandoned an activity you love because your body couldn't perform it the same way anymore? What if adapting rather than abandoning is the key? This leads me to something even more unexpected about exceptional aging, something that surprised me even more than the physical discoveries, and it has nothing to do with exercise at all. The second quality that sets truly exceptional seniors apart might be the most unexpected: technological fluency. Not expertise or innovation, but a persistent willingness to engage with new technologies despite the frustration that often comes with learning them. Most people assume that technology naturally belongs to the young, that there's an inevitable dividing line between generations when it comes to digital adaptation. I certainly believed this myth myself for years. When my grandson Tommy tried to convince me to get a smartphone at 72, I initially refused. "I've lived this long without one," I told him. "Why complicate things now?" What I didn't realize then was how this decision was slowly isolating me from both loved ones and the broader world. Everything from family photos to community events was increasingly happening in digital spaces I couldn't access. The turning point came during the pandemic, when I was completely cut off from my weekly bridge club and community center activities. Out of desperation, I finally accepted Tommy's offer to help me set up video calls. I still remember the overwhelming confusion of that first Zoom meeting, the unfamiliar icons, the awkward delays, my frustration with the mute button that seemed to have a mind of its own. Grandpa, you look like you're in witness protection, Tommy laughed as I accidentally enabled a bizarre filter that gave me enormous eyebrows. We spent nearly an hour figuring out the basics, and I felt every one of my 75 years in that moment, clumsy, out of place, and honestly a little embarrassed. But then something unexpected happened. By the third call, I was managing on my own. Within weeks, I was the one helping my friend Donna, who's 5 years younger, navigate the same technology. 6 months later, I had joined 3 online communities, reconnected with college friends across the country, and even started exploring smartphone photography. My world expanded in ways I never anticipated. The technology that I feared would complicate my life had actually simplified and enriched it beyond measure. What digital technology have you been avoiding because it seems too complicated or not worth the effort to learn? What connections or opportunities might be waiting on the other side of that resistance? If you're finding value in these insights, I'd love to hear which one resonates with you most. Type ADAPT in the comments if the physical adaptability lesson spoke to you, or connect if the technology point hit home. And while you're at it, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so we can continue sharing these conversations about what makes for an exceptional life at any age. I'm truly grateful you're here with me today. Now, the third quality I've observed might be the most counterintuitive of all. The third quality of truly exceptional seniors completely contradicts what most people assume about aging. It's social expansiveness, the willingness to form genuine new friendships and meaningful connections later in life. I used to believe the common wisdom that our capacity for forming deep friendships diminishes with age. You make your real friends when you're young, my mother used to say. There seemed to be an unwritten rule that after retirement, your social circle naturally contracts to family and a few long-standing friends. This belief was shattered for me at 73 when I reluctantly attended a community painting class after my wife's passing. Grieving and isolated, I went mostly to escape the emptiness of our home. I certainly wasn't expecting to form any significant new connections at my age. Then I met Sanvi, a retired physician who had immigrated from India just 2 years earlier at 68 to be closer to her grandchildren. Despite our different backgrounds, we bonded over our shared experience of reinventing ourselves in our 70s. What began as casual conversation during class evolved into weekly coffee meetings, where we shared perspectives on everything from art and literature to the challenges of aging in a youth-obsessed culture. In my culture, growing older traditionally meant becoming more respected, not less visible, she told me one afternoon. I refuse to accept that my capacity for friendship has an expiration date simply because I've lived more years. Through Sanvi, I met Carlos, an 80-year-old former history teacher with a passion for local architecture and terrible jokes. He's now one of my closest confidants, and the three of us have created a social circle that continues to expand in ways I never thought possible at this stage of life. What I've come to understand is that exceptional aging isn't about clinging to existing relationships, though those remain precious, but about maintaining the courage and curiosity to form connections that are entirely new. These fresh relationships bring perspectives that challenge us, conversations that surprise us, and a sense of possibility that defies the narrative of diminishing horizons. Has there been a time when you avoided a new social opportunity because you thought you were too old to form meaningful new connections? What potential friendships might be waiting for you outside that self-imposed limitation? This willingness to expand rather than contract socially leads directly to our fourth revelation, one that challenges perhaps the most persistent myth about growing older. The fourth characteristic of exceptional seniors directly contradicts one of the most damaging stereotypes about aging: the belief that our thinking inevitably becomes more rigid and fixed as we grow older. What I've discovered instead is that cognitive flexibility, the ability to reconsider long-held opinions and embrace new understandings, is actually one of the greatest opportunities of our later years. For most of my life, I prided myself on having firm convictions. By 60, I thought I had life pretty well figured out. I had my political views, my religious beliefs, my opinions on how things should be done, all settled and secure. I mistakenly believed this certainty was wisdom, when in many ways it was actually limiting my growth. My awakening came through my granddaughter Zoe. At 24, she challenged my views on climate change during a tense family dinner 4 years ago. My initial reaction was defensive. Who was she to question my decades of experience and thinking? But something in her passionate concern made me pause instead of dismiss her perspective outright. "Grandpa," she said, I'm not asking you to agree with me right away. I'm just asking you to look at the evidence with fresh eyes. That request to look with fresh eyes struck me deeply. Was I capable of that anymore? Or had my thinking calcified with age? The question itself felt like a challenge to my sense of self. I spent the next several months reading books and articles that contradicted my long-held position. At first it was uncomfortable, even threatening, but gradually I experienced something unexpected, the exhilaration of growth, of my mind expanding in new directions. By my 75th birthday, I had substantially revised my understanding of climate issues and found myself advocating for environmental concerns in ways that would have astonished my younger self. My friend Walter experienced something similar at 82. After a lifetime of avoiding technology, a stint in the hospital left him dependent on his daughter's family for several weeks. During that time, his teenage grandchildren introduced him to online gaming. At first, I was just humoring them, he told me. Now I'm leading a team of players from 4 different countries, most of whom are younger than my grandkids. It completely changed how I think about community and learning. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important? Could your resistance to new ideas be habit rather than wisdom? If you're finding these reflections meaningful, I'd love to know which has resonated most strongly with you. Type flexible in the comments if this discussion of cognitive adaptability speaks to your experience, or any of the earlier keywords if those lessons connected more deeply. Your engagement truly helps our community grow, and I'm grateful for every comment and share. As we continue, I want to address something that many find even more challenging than changing our minds, changing how we feel about ourselves. The 5th quality I've observed in exceptional seniors is perhaps the most personally challenging, a particular kind of emotional resilience that doesn't just endure difficulty, but actually grows through it. This isn't about being stoic or suppressing feelings. It's about developing a relationship with our emotional lives that becomes more nuanced and grace-filled with age. I've always considered myself emotionally tough. Growing up in the post-war era, we weren't encouraged to dwell on feelings or personal struggles. When my wife died 6 years ago, I approached grief as I had approached every other challenge in life, something to endure privately and overcome as quickly as possible. I kept busy, rarely spoke about my loss, and prided myself on staying strong for my family. Then came the panic attacks. They started about 8 months after Linda's death. Sudden, overwhelming episodes that left me breathless and terrified. My doctor explained they were likely related to unprocessed grief, a concept that seemed indulgent and unnecessary to me at the time. "Albert," she said gently during one appointment, "emotional resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's about moving through it with awareness." At her suggestion, I reluctantly joined a grief support group at our community center. Walking into that room of strangers for the first time was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It felt like admitting failure, that I wasn't strong enough to handle this on my own. What I discovered there transformed my understanding of emotional strength. There was David, 79, who shared his journey through losing his wife of 52 years with such raw honesty that it cracked something open in me, and Elaine, 68, who spoke about learning to hold both profound loss and genuine joy simultaneously as she navigated life after her son's death. "The grief doesn't go away," she told me over coffee after one meeting, "but it changes shape, and so do you." Through their example, I gradually learned that true emotional resilience isn't about bouncing back unchanged from difficulty. It's about allowing yourself to be changed, broken open in ways that ultimately expand your capacity for connection, compassion, and yes, even joy. This revelation connects to something universal I've observed. Those who age most gracefully aren't those who experience less hardship, but those who allow hardship to deepen rather than diminish them. They don't just survive their losses, they allow themselves to be transformed by them. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be vulnerable about something difficult you're experiencing? Have you been confusing emotional strength with emotional avoidance? This brings us to our final and perhaps most profound revelation, the quality that truly separates exceptional seniors from everyone else. And it's likely not what you're expecting. The 6th and most transformative quality I've observed in extraordinary seniors is their commitment to purposeful contribution, the ongoing practice of offering their unique gifts to others in ways that transcend self-interest. This isn't about grand gestures or formal volunteer positions, though these can be valuable. It's about a fundamental orientation toward service that becomes more, not less, central as we age. I'll admit that this understanding came to me through a painful lesson. After retiring from teaching at 70, I initially approached my newfound freedom as a well-deserved rest time to focus exclusively on my own interests and pleasures. I traveled, took up new hobbies, and spent hours reading books I'd set aside during my working years. I'd earned this time for myself, I reasoned. Yet despite having everything I thought I wanted, I found myself increasingly restless and dissatisfied. My days felt oddly empty, despite being full of activities. Something essential was missing, though I couldn't identify what it was. The pivotal moment came during a conversation with my friend Jack, a former colleague who had retired the same year I did. While I seemed to be floundering, he was thriving. When I asked him why, his answer was simple but profound. "I retired from my job, Albert, not from my purpose," he said. "I just found new ways to teach." Jack had begun mentoring young people in our community who couldn't afford college prep services. He spoke about these students with the same passion and commitment he'd shown throughout his teaching career. The specifics had changed, but his fundamental drive to contribute his knowledge and experience hadn't diminished at all. His example prompted me to reconsider how I was spending my time. I began volunteering at a literacy program, teaching adult learners to read. The first time Sarah, a 42-year-old woman who had never learned to read as a child, made it through an entire paragraph on her own, the look of pride and possibility on her face reawakened something in me I hadn't realized was dormant. I felt needed again, not in the potentially draining way I sometimes felt with family obligations, but in a generative way that energized rather than depleted me. The days I taught became anchors in my week, giving structure and meaning to the surrounding time. What I've come to understand is that exceptional aging isn't about freedom from responsibility. It's about the freedom to choose responsibilities that align with our deepest values and unique gifts. Those who age most gracefully don't withdraw from contribution. They refine and focus it in ways that bring increasing joy and fulfillment. If you're resonating with any of these insights, I'd love for you to share which one speaks to you most powerfully. Type purpose in the comments if this discussion of meaningful contribution connects with your experience, or any of the previous keywords if those lessons felt more relevant. Your engagement helps our community grow, and I'm genuinely grateful for your presence here. As we wrap up these reflections, I want to offer some final thoughts about what I've learned on this journey of discovery. As I reflect on these 6 qualities that set exceptional seniors apart: physical adaptability, technological fluency, social expansiveness, cognitive flexibility, emotional resilience, and purposeful contribution, I recognize that they share a common thread. They all involve moving toward life rather than away from it, engaging rather than withdrawing, growing rather than diminishing. Of course, there's important nuance here. There are seasons when rest and retreat are necessary, times when scaling back is the wisest choice. Physical limitations that are real and need to be respected. The point isn't to deny the challenges of aging, but to approach them with a spirit of creativity and possibility rather than resignation. When I look back at my journey from someone who viewed aging primarily as loss to someone who now experiences it as a uniquely valuable stage of life, I'm struck by how much of that transformation came from questioning assumptions I didn't even realize I held. The stories I had absorbed about what growing older meant, stories of inevitable decline, irrelevance, and diminished capacity, were so deeply ingrained that I had never thought to challenge them. Yet in challenging those narratives, not through positive thinking or denial, but through lived experience and the example of others, I discovered that many of the limitations I anticipated were self-imposed rather than inevitable. If I could offer practical guidance based on what I've learned, it would be these simple practices. Question every assumption you hold about what's possible or appropriate at your age. Seek out examples of people who defy limiting stereotypes about aging. Approach new technologies, activities, and relationships with curiosity rather than preemptive defeat. And perhaps most importantly, continue to offer your gifts to the world in ways that bring you alive. There's a deeper philosophical truth I've come to embrace through all of this. Our later years offer a unique opportunity to live more authentically than at any other stage of life. The external markers of success that often drive our earlier decades, professional achievement, financial accumulation, social status, naturally recede in importance. What remains is the essence of who we are and what truly matters to us. If you found value in these reflections, I hope you'll share this video with someone else who might benefit from challenging their own assumptions about aging. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences or insights about what makes for an exceptional later life. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd be honored to have you join our community as we continue exploring what it means to age not just gracefully, but exceptionally. Thank you for joining me on this journey. The conversation about reimagining our later years is just beginning, and your voice is an essential part of it.